that. Well, good afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Steve Anderson. I'm Dean of the School of Social Work, and I want to thank you for coming today for our inaugural lecture in our series, Harnessing Technology for Social Good. Like many fields, the social work profession recently has developed a set of grand challenges as a way of inspiring work in important areas. One of the grand challenges identified is harnessing technology for social good. This challenge is based on the recognition that, quote, innovative applications of new digital technology present opportunities for social and human services to reach more people with greater impact on our most vexing social problems, unquote. The scope of possibilities within this broad challenge are great, and among other things might include direct service and policymaking applications, improvements in our research capabilities, and access to technology for poor and vulnerable groups. There are few, if any, places in the world that can match this campus's wealth of quality with respect to technology and information services. This makes our school an ideal place to explore and experiment with socially meaningful uses of technology. We've initiated this lecture series as a starting point toward this end. We want to inspire more conversations and related networking about how technology can improve the work we do and our related social impact. I see this series as a first step in a growing effort within our school to work collaboratively in this direction. I want to thank personally Judy Havlicek, sitting right here. Again, not everyone knows her. She's a faculty member who really put this together. She came forward with the idea for initiating the series, and then she's worked hard to identify a great set of speakers that include not only our own faculty members, but faculty members from other units on campus, and some faculty members from other leading schools of social work around the country. We've been gratified by the initial interest we've received despite very modest promotion. And as a result, we're going to videotape all sessions and live stream all the future sessions so that we can get a broader reach and dissemination of this work. We certainly welcome you reaching out to us with ideas you might have about future iterations of this series or related ideas that might be related to harnessing technology for social good. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to Judy, and she can introduce our inaugural speaker.
Thank you, Steve. I would really like to first thank Steve for having the vision to bring this lecture series to the school. He really is the one who has an interest in harnessing technology for social good. But I will admit he gave me free rein to put this together. I would be remiss if I didn't thank my colleagues at the School of Social Work. 3 of the lecturers that are on the series came from ideas that they had. So it really is a collaborative effort. I am honored to present to you Dr. Ryan Wade. I think Ryan really encapsulates a lot of what this series is going to bring to the university and to the school. He is, I think, has been trained, his knowledge base is in, and he just has a spirit of interdisciplinary collaboration. He received his BA in psychology at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. He went on to get his master's in social work at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. Afterwards, he did a lot of clinical work, crisis work, with individuals from diverse populations. Following his clinical practice, he went on to pursue a PhD, not in social work, but in public health, which I think really demonstrates his commitment to interdisciplinary scholarship. I also think what's interesting about Ryan is that I think his training in psychology, social work, and public health really positions him to advance the dual mission of social work to alleviate human suffering, but to also address those larger structural issues around discrimination, racism, inequalities, and injustice that really cause human suffering and pain. The last thing I want you to know about Ryan is that when I asked him to be a presenter in this lecture series, he didn't blink an eye. He said yes. And then when I said, would you please go first? He said yes. lot of the lecturers are going to bring to this series, which is a passion for using technology in responsible and innovative ways to extend the reach of what we do, but to also extend its impact. So with that, let me present Brian Wade to you, and let's give him a warm welcome.
Thank you everyone for coming. I'm glad to see a pretty big group here. Thank you, Julie, for that introduction. Thank you, Steve, as well. So I have a lot packed into this presentation, so I'm just going to go ahead and dive right in. So the title of this presentation is Technology and Social Work, Gay, Bisexual, and Color in Online Discrimination. So just to kind of orient us all as we kick off this series. So technology already plays a significant role in research and interventions that address gay and bisexual men's health. This stuff has been going on for probably close to a decade now. Online sexual networking websites and geolocator apps have been used in research and in intervention pretty extensively by this point. It's an excellent recruitment tool for a population that can sometimes be difficult to reach. And so people have been using some of these networking apps to recruit gay and bisexual men for their studies, usually on sexuality and health. And there's also been work done in intervention among this population. So mobile apps have been used in HIV prevention initiatives. So one of those things includes commodity ordering. So mobile apps that have been leveraged for gay and bisexual men to order safer sex resources. So commodity ordering kind of refers to safer sex materials like condoms or at-home HIV testing kits. People have been making that easy and accessible via mobile apps for gay and bisexual men. Testing and screening reminders, there have been a lot of apps developed for that. And so this is for HIV testing, STI screening. It'll give you, some of these apps will give you a notification when you're due for your next 3-month screening and testing, which has been shown to be beneficial for some men. And then provider location. So mobile apps have been used to help them identify providers in the area who can offer health services. And some of these have been really sophisticated too. I was actually part of a project when I was a graduate student at the University of Michigan, where we surveyed local HIV and STI testing services, and we wanted to really capture a lot of the nuance of these different locations. Because while there may be many, especially in urban areas, they're not all of the same quality. So we surveyed some of these locations to determine the degree to which they are LGBT friendly, or the degree to which they are friendly towards racial and ethnic minorities, in a lot of different categories. And we compiled this information and created a website where they can access and find out where the providers are, but they can also filter on whether or not there's like explicit LGBTQ inclusiveness in some of these locations, which can be very beneficial. As we know, sometimes these men, especially young men, will go to some of these health providers and have a terrible experience, and then they won't go back. And so it's really counterproductive to combat HIV epidemic. So that's just another example of how technology has been leveraged to impact the population. And then mobile-based linkage and retention, that's been used for a long time. So text reminders for medication adherence has been used before smartphones. These are automatic text messages that are sent at specific times for people who need to be reminded to take the medication. There's a whole wide body of literature on medication adherence and how that's critical and how that's difficult for a lot of people. And so for folks who are already living with HIV, medication adherence is pretty crucial, especially due to the fact that failure to adhere to medication can result in resistance, viral resistance. And I do believe there's also been a move towards text reminders for medication adherence for those who are using PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis, as an HIV prevention. So this stuff's been going on. Technology has been used for this population. And it's largely, there's been a predominant focus on HIV, especially among racial and ethnic minorities, no doubt, due to the disproportionate rate of HIV among racial and ethnic minority gay and bisexual men. However, my question is, well, what about mental health? Kind of going back to my roots and my training in clinical social work. This is an area that I'm passionate about. And when I was a graduate student, I actually published a comprehensive literature review and content analysis of health-related literature that focuses on young gay and bisexual Black men. I wanted to know what was the state of the research on that population and health. And what I found was that to an overwhelming degree, most of the research on that population is focused on sexual behavior and HIV. To a neglect, where other critical health domains are neglected among that population, mental health being one of them. And so there's a huge gap in the literature on this population, and so I sought to try to fill those gaps. So we know that minority stress, such as racial discrimination, is a contributing factor to adverse psychological health outcomes among this population. So we could be using technology to address the intersection of discrimination and psychological health among that population, which is the direction I wanted to move my research in. However, before we do that, we do need to take a step back and identify the ways in which technology and digital landscapes may foster discriminatory environments. And so that's where I kind of started my doctoral work and my dissertation work, which led to my project called Racialized Sexual Discrimination, or RSD for short, and Psychological Well-Being Among Young Black Gay and Bisexual Men. So I'm going to describe this project. And as I talk about this project, I'll give you a little bit of background information. We'll talk about online dating. We're going to talk about what is racialized sexual discrimination, and also talk about the association between RSD and health and well-being. It's a bit of a mouthful, racialized sexual discrimination, so RSD for short, from here on out. And then so when I orient you to what this phenomenon is, then I'll talk about my empirical work. I ran 3 studies. The first one was a scale development study, the second was a scale testing, and the third one was a model testing study. And then after that, I'll talk about the implications of that work, some of the insights that I got from that work, future directions from that work. And then we're going to circle back to the main thread of this lecture series, is about how we can harness technology to promote social good. All right. So, online dating. This is the new normal. This is pretty ubiquitous at this point, especially among young folks. People are going to the internet, using websites and using mobile apps to find partners. This is just a chart that illustrates that. So you can see among young populations from 18 to 24, there was nearly a 3-fold increase in online dating between 2013 and 2015. So now this is now old. It's been 3 years. So in 2 years we have a 3-fold increase. Now it's been 3 years since that data was published. To be sure, there is a substantially higher number of the population that is using online and mobile apps to find partners. And this graph here on the right just kind of illustrates that. So this is pretty ubiquitous, especially among young populations. And some of the data is showing that among gay and bisexual in particular, it's even more common for people to find partners online. So this is just a kind of a scattering of all the different, not all, but some of the websites and the mobile apps that people have been using to find partners among gay men in particular. Of course, I imagine many of you have heard of Grindr by now. So that is by far the most widely used mobile app, and I think even used platform period, because there are some mobile apps and then there are just some websites, but I think Grindr is by far the most widely used platform. Might be followed by Scruff, which is another app. Adam for Adam here at the top is actually a website and not an app, but it predated Grindr and still has a pretty large user base. And then of course the tried and true and notorious Craigslist that predates all of this, the personal sections. People have been using that for a long time, however, no longer. I don't know if folks have heard, but the personal sections in Craigslist was recently shut down due to an effort to combat sex trafficking. And so this has been a really contentious subject for a while. Craigslist is no more, but Grindr still reigns supreme. So I think in the interest of time, I have a video here, but I think I'm going to skip that because it's a little long. But this video will kind of orient you to what racialized sexual discrimination is. But I'll just tell you what it is in briefer terms. So this gives you an example of what we're talking about here with racialized sexual discrimination. Let's just give you a moment to read these profiles. So imagine you're a young gay man of color and you open up Grindr, you're looking for partners, and you see profiles that include this kind of content. See, it can be pretty offensive. No ambiguity here. Here's another couple of profiles. Right, so young gay and bisexual men of color are seeing this kind of content all the time. And one might imagine that if people use these apps daily, they see these profiles daily, what kind of effect is that having when folks seeing day in, day out their racial and ethnic identity group devalued and rejected time and time again? So that's what I want to know. What kind of effect is this sort of thing having? So, what is racialized sexual discrimination? So, on websites and mobile apps that facilitate gay male dating and sexual networking, researchers have reported that racialized preferences are widespread and are often made visible on user profiles. These discriminatory preferences are diverse. They're both exclusionary and inclusionary. I'll give more examples of what that means. They're typically expressed by white men in these spaces, and they are largely directed towards racial and ethnic minority groups. So there's not a huge literature on this subject, and in fact, quite a bit of it comes from overseas. I think there's probably several studies that are based out of Australia, and researchers are using a variety of different terms to describe this phenomenon. Sexual racism might be, I think, the most frequently used term. Romantic segregation is another term that's been brought out there. But the term that I'm using is racialized sexual discrimination, or RSD for short. There are a lot of reasons for why I selected that specific terminology. I'd like to know more about why I chose that term. But that's the term that I'll be using from here on out. So, RSD, this is grounded upon a number of social and physical factors such as phenotypic characteristics and cultural standards of beauty, sexual scripts and stereotypes, social historical legacies of racial inequality, all comprise this phenomenon. It manifests in a multitude of ways, including overt or covert exclusion, objectification, fetishization, and it has implications for several health outcomes. HIV risk being one of them, and the focus of this talk is psychological well-being, markers of psychological well-being, including depression and so forth. So just a quick note on HIV, since we won't really talk about it much in the context of RSD. But one of the key ways that RSD impacts the HIV epidemic includes the restriction of sexual networks. So there's been a lot of research into what is the main contributing factors to the disproportionate HIV epidemic among gay and bisexual men of color. There's been study after study after study and meta-analysis after meta-analysis indicating that individual risk behaviors, which is the predominant focus in the health sciences, does not account for the disproportionate rate of HIV among this population. And in fact, a lot of studies have found that gay and bisexual men of color, specifically gay and bisexual black men, actually use safer sex strategies to a significantly greater degree than white men. So these include common use at every sexual encounter, having fewer sexual partners, not having sex under the influence of drugs and alcohol. Black men have been noted to perform all these things to a statistically significantly greater degree than white men, and yet we still see these disproportionate rates of HIV in the population. So these individual risk behaviors are not accounting for the disparity. What might be accounting for the disparity, where a lot of the research is focusing on, is sexual network restriction. So this is where black men are excluded from the broader sexual networks within the community, such that black men are only having sex, or mostly having sex, with other black men. And this is a consequence of the discrimination from non-black men, not including black men within the sexual networks. And so we already know there's a high concentration of HIV in the black community. And even when you employ, all the safer sex strategies that you can, Black men are, by most accounts, doing pretty well. If you have a high community viral load, the virus will still proliferate at a faster rate. We know people aren't going to be perfect in their safer sex prevention tools, so it doesn't take much for HIV to proliferate in a closed sexual network. And so RSDs contribute to the HIV epidemic. But we're going to talk about how it might contribute to psychological health. So inclusionary versus exclusionary preferences. So we saw some examples. Inclusionary preferences is when people write who they want to contact them. Right? So somebody might write, I'm into white guys. That's an example. It's under the broad umbrella of exclusion. It suggests that people who are not white will contact me. It's written as who I want to contact me. Exclusionary is the other way around, where it's written as who I don't want to contact me. So if you're Black or Asian, don't contact me. Personal preference as thinly veiled racism has been a big part of the discourse in the literature on RSD. So that's the dominant narrative in these spaces. That this is not racism, this is just personal preference. And there's been a lot of research kind of discovering that idea. Evaluation and rejection, a common theme under RSD. So promotion of sexual homophily, again, these are closed sexual networks. People are evaluated and rejected. They don't get kind of brought into the broader fold of sexual networks. So with them. Whiteness is the hallmark of desirability, is a recurrent theme. As we know, these Eurocentric beauty standards are global at this point, and so whiteness is seen as the standard by which everyone strives to achieve, which excludes and then objectification, eroticization, and stereotypes. So sexual scripts that are ascribed to racial and ethnic minority groups. Positioning is one of many ways that this manifests. So positioning is whether you're top or bottom, right? So we have these sexual scripts that get ascribed to certain groups. So, for example, Black men are usually regarded as these highly virile, dominant, aggressive sexual partners, right? So they usually are regarded as tops. Whereas the racial narrative surrounding, say, Asian men is that they're more weak and submissive, and so they get regarded as bottoms in these spaces, right? And so some people kind of get locked into these roles, whether they want them or not. And sometimes that actually has implications for HIV too. All right, so let's launch into the studies. So there's been a lot of qualitative research in this phenomenon, but not a lot of quantitative research. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to find a way to measure this phenomenon quantitatively. So the first part of my project was to develop a scale of RSD. And so I wanted to kind of pin down what is this construct, and then how can we measure it? What are the experiences that people are having? And so in order to do that, I employed this method. So I started with a qualitative research project. And so I ran a series of focus groups where I invited gay and bisexual men of color, or professionals who work directly with gay and bisexual men of color, to come and participate in these focus groups so we can talk about RSD, kind of figure out what the construct is, define it, and then identify categories that might describe that phenomenon. So I recruited folks from LGBT and HIV service organizations. We ran 4 focus groups with a total of 16 participants. The groups lasted for about an hour and a half. I took notes, and my advisor who was there took notes as well. There was no audio recording or anything. We just kind of took notes on the key points that participants raised. They were compensated $20 for their participation. And my data analytic strategy was we ran thematic analyses of the participant responses in order to identify the categories that might describe RSD in its locality. So from those focus groups, participants verified there were 4 overarching domains that describe RSD in its locality. So the first one was exclusion, so we talked about this already. So preferences, that was the inclusionary part. Which racial and ethnic groups do I prefer? And then exclusion was the other side of that, which racial and ethnic groups do I not prefer? So that was the broad exclusionary category, and we had 8 items for preferences and 8 items for exclusion. Then the next domain of RSD was rejection. So this is pretty kind of self-evidently titled here. So we have overt rejection. So this is just basically when a person of color contacts somebody, a white person, and they say, no, I'm not interested in you because of your race. That's overt rejection. The other side of rejection is just simply ignoring messages. You contact somebody, they just don't respond, and you perceive that the reason they don't respond is because of your race and ethnicity. Third category was degradation. So this is just hurtful comments when you contact somebody and make kind of blatant discriminatory remarks about your racial identity. And the fourth and perhaps most interesting category was erotic objectification. And this was broken down into two subcategories. The first is role assumptions, so that's what I described earlier, like sexual positioning, assuming that people will embody certain sexual roles based on their race. And the other is desire for physical traits. So this is sort of stereotypes described to people of particular racial and ethnic background, stereotypes about their physical traits. It's a common theme that came up. And then we had three different types of questions. So for each experience that we wanted to capture, we wanted to ascertain beliefs. So to what degree do you believe that this is in fact racist? We wanted to capture effects. So what kind of negative effect does this experience have with you? And then we wanted to capture frequency. How often do you encounter any given particular experience? And then we had three contexts. So the first context was partner browsing. So this is when you experience RSD when you're just swiping on your phone and looking at user profiles. The second context is partner negotiations. This is when you're actually having a conversation with someone and you experience RSD. And the third context that we wanted to examine was partner contact. This is when you actually come into physical contact with the person that you're looking at a sexual encounter with. So we created a scale, we covered all of these things. And then the second part of the project was we ran these cognitive interviews. So we created the scale and we administered the scale to 7 interviewees. All of them were young gay and bisexual black men, and we elicited feedback from them. We wanted to know things like survey length, item redundancy, spelling and wording, just to make sure that we were covering our bases there. And then after we did that, we gave the survey to a panel of expert reviewers, and they gave us feedback on what we should, so the augmentations we should make to the scale. So the first augmentation was to omit the partner contact category entirely. And a big reason for that was just due to the length of the scale. It just became a little bit too burdensome to try to capture all this content. So we got rid of partner contact and just kept the browser and negotiation context. And then due to the length of the complication. Then we decided to omit the belief cluster of items. The reason we included that in the first place is we wanted to contribute to this discussion of whether or not RSD is in fact racism. But other researchers have been doing that already. So we decided maybe we don't really need to focus on that, and let's just focus on the effect of frequency. So we talked about length, we talked about, we got some great feedback on the definitions of racism versus discrimination, which also played into our decisions on how to describe this phenomenon, come up with the term RSD in the first place. And then the final version of the scale had 60 items. So we had 30 items that captured the effect of an experience, and we had 30 items that captured the frequency of an experience. Right? So each experience was basically measured twice, an effect and a frequency. And so we actually computed a multiplicative term of effect times frequency to come up with the overall impact score. Okay, so leading into study number 2, we wanted to test that scale. So it's going to cover study 2 and study 3. We wanted to test that scale, the psychometric properties of that scale. So we launched a large survey, and this is the inclusion criteria that surveys a nationwide survey. Folks had to identify as a man, had to be a person of color, had to be between the ages of 18 and 29, had to identify as non-heterosexual, or report having had sexual contact with a man in beginning of last year. They had a report, how to use the website on mobile app to find partners, and they had design in the United States. We recruited participants from a variety of venues. These are the venues we used. Facebook, by and large, accounted for the vast majority of our participants, and Scruff coming in second. And the rest of these are other websites for the most part. So we had these men complete a 30 to 45-minute survey that examined RSD experiences. We include that scale and some other scales measuring psychological well-being, interpersonal characteristics, and sociodemographics. And so our data analytics strategy for the scale testing part of the study, we ran an exploratory factor analysis, and for the model testing, we ran a hierarchical linear regression. So this is just to give you a visual example of some of the ads that we ran on Facebook. So have you ever been rejected for sex based on your race and ethnicity? We had this little kind of dialogue here that mimics what this mimics partner negotiation. This is the actual exchange that a person might have on these apps. And this kind of illustrates some of these things that these young men are encountering. This is just another one here. This is an ad that we had. On the left, that's what it looks like on Facebook. On the right, that's what our ad looked like in Scruff, which is another mobile app for Bisexual men. So again, this one here is kind of illustrating the stereotypes of the sexual roles that are ascribed to certain racial groups. So this is just to give you an illustration of what the ads look like, what the participants were seeing when we recruited them. So we ran an exploratory factor analysis with obligated rotation, minimum factor loading of 0.2, minimum eigenvalue of 0.5 is pretty standard for EFAs. Our cross-loaded items, we had 4 cross-loaded items. They were retained on the factor in which they had the highest factor loading. And so this was interesting. So from our focus groups, we had 4 domains that would describe our participants. But when we were in the actual factor analysis, an 8-factor structure emerged. And so we had to reconceptualize the hypothesized scale structure. So when we did that, we actually reorganized it into 3 broad domains that those 8 factors would fall under. The first one was white-centric, the second was black-centric, and the third was a neutral or non-directional domain. So this is some quick examples of the white-centric items. So one of those 8 factors was white supremacy. So just here's an example of white supremacy. So when I see a profile from white people clearly state that they want to meet other white people, I have a negative reaction, or how often do you see this? Example of a white supremacy item. That was previously defined as when we had our 4 factors, when we had our 4 domains, we described that as the exclusion preferred. White for white, that was a factor loading. White inferiority was the other category under white-centric items. So an example of white inferiority was when I see a profile from white people explicitly state that they do not want to meet other white people and have a negative reaction, or how often do you see this? So that emerged as a factor. However, the white inferiority did not have the greatest Corvax alpha value at 5. So we ultimately wouldn't pay a whole lot of attention to that. So some examples of a black-centric item. So one of those factors was white rejecting black. A pretty strong alpha value. So when my messages are rejected by white people, I have a negative reaction. Example, white rejecting black. Black rejecting black. So when my messages are ignored by people of my own race and ethnicity, I have a negative reaction / alpha. We wanted to make sure that we weren't just looking at the experiences of basically white propagated sexual discrimination. We also wanted to look at how that could manifest as black rejecting black. So we had this binary of, for everything we looked at the effects of how often do you see it, and how are you affected when you experience these this phenomenon of white folks and also black people in their own. get two more categories in the black section. White desiring black, so when white people express a desire for a specific physical trait related to my race and ethnicity and a negative reaction / how you see this. That was previously coded as erotic objectification for physical traits in our original conceptual image. And then black desiring black, so the same thing. I see a profile of people of my race and ethnicity expressing a desire for a specific physical trait related to other people of my race and ethnicity. I have negative reactions / how often you see this. All right, and here's the neutral / non-directional items. Role assumptions. So when I see a profile for people of my race and ethnicity, assuming that other people of my race and ethnicity will take a particular sexual role. And then degradation. When I see a profile for people of my race and ethnicity, seems to be hurtful. White people, black people, I have negative reactions / how often you see this. So those are the 8 factors that emerge that we reconceptualize into these 3 domains. Okay. So after gathering that data, we moved into the model testing component of the study. We ran a series of hierarchical linear regressions. This was a 2-block model for each of the 12 models. Block 1 included our control variables, here. And then block 2, we entered one of those 8, or one of the 4 black-centric factors and one of the 2 white-centric factors. For the purposes of this study, we didn't look at the neutral, non-directional ones. And then we had our outcomes of interest was self-worth or depressive symptoms. So we had 6 models looking at each. And here are the results. So I highlighted the ones that were significant. So for the white supremacy factor, you see that that was significant in a positive direction for the depression model. So encountering white supremacy was significantly associated with higher depressive symptoms among our study. Black rejecting black was another one that emerged as significant. So experiencing black rejection of black was associated with higher depressive symptoms among our sample of gay black men. And then white desiring black, that was the only one that actually emerged as significant in both models of depression and self-worth. So we found that when our sample experienced the white desiring black phenomenon, again, this is when white folks express a desire for physical traits related to their race and ethnicity. That was associated with more depressive symptoms, and it was associated with lower feelings of self-worth. So that emerged as the most significant manifestation of RSD in our models. And so, to kind of take it back to the original conceptualization, that was previously defined as objectification. So what does that mean? So white desiring black, i.e. physical objectification, that was the only subscale that had a negative impact on both depressive symptoms and self-worth. Interestingly enough, white rejecting black was not significant, even though that's something that's probably talked about as frequently as the objectification part. Some of our thoughts about this. So young men may have developed a robust coping capacity for dealing with personally mediated racism in online videos. But white supremacy and black rejecting black, they were significant. And so our thinking here is that the impact of unchangeable social context that elevates whiteness as superior maybe contribute to the adverse psychological health effects that folks are experiencing. So intra-group discrimination is particularly salient here, but minimally investigated. That's that black rejecting black phenomenon. It came up in our focus groups a lot, and people were really conflicted about how to even think about that in the context of RSD. But what happens when I try to reach out to another black person, but they say, no, I only think white guys. That's really complicated, and so we need to look into that more. But what is clear is that the objectification piece is having the most significant effect. And that was, I don't want to say surprising, but of all the different domains that we were interested in, we thought that that one could kind of go either way, because it depends on people's motivations and their reasons for using these apps. If folks are going to these apps because they want to have a sexual encounter, which is the reason most people are going on these apps, sometimes objectification might play in their favor. It might give them access to sexual opportunities. Of course, at the cost of their race and ethnicity being objectified and fetishized. So we didn't quite know how it would play out, but as it turns out, that had the most robust effect, objectification than anything else. So implications, insights, and future directions. So digital landscapes. Digital landscapes can reflect or even amplify traditional forms of discrimination. Before Grindr was a thing, if you wanted to hook up with someone, you went to a gay bar, right? That was the way you did it. But in gay bars, people weren't wearing T-shirts that say, white men only, or no black men come up and talk to me. But in these digital landscapes, that is a thing that occurs, right? So this is a different social sphere in which people are operating, where racism can manifest in different ways, and it may manifest in person. So it may also introduce new forms of discrimination that you may not otherwise encounter in in-person contexts. Digital landscapes also provide opportunities for novel and critical phenomenological research, as demonstrated hopefully by this work here. And digital landscapes are also spaces for social work intervention. So we know that racism is occurring in these spaces, and we know that young men are in these spaces a lot. So there's an opportunity to intervene in these spaces and kind of disrupt sort of this racism that's occurring. So just some insights about recruitment of hard-to-reach populations. So many of you who do research are interested in identifying members from this population. This is absolutely possible, but you need to know your recruitment venues and its limitations. We learned a lot about recruitment venues and some of the pros and cons of using certain venues to recruit gay, bisexual, men of color. Some of those things you need to consider are the costs. So sometimes it's very expensive to recruit. You need to think about the user base, who's actually using these apps. You need to think about the targeting parameters. And you also need to think about selection bias when you're writing analyses when you recruit members from some of these apps. One of the things that has since changed from when I ran this project is that you can no longer do targeting recruitment in Facebook based on sexual orientation. They have since removed that feature entirely. So that can make recruitment in Facebook very difficult. Facebook, as folks know, has been facing a lot of criticism about privacy and a whole host of things. So they've been making a lot of changes on the platform. So we'll have to talk about health promotion initiatives to mitigate the effects of RSD. Of course, being in social work, we want to think about how we intervene. And so I kind of think of these things at three different levels. So the clinical level. So thinking about culturally and developmentally tailored approaches to psychotherapy that account for the unique experiences of gay and bisexual men of color. So I kind of think about RSD as being part of a holistic curriculum of clinical training in treating LGBT clients, looking at clinical social work to think about. I also think about using critical consciousness interventions in tackling RSD. How can we engage this population and how to use critical consciousness to help mitigate the adverse effects, psychological effects of this problem. So at the community level, so the awareness of the scope and impact of RSD may help to mobilize the broader LGBT community to pursue media campaigns. So now we're going to start circling back to how we can harness technology and media to kind of combat these things that are contributing to adverse psychological outcomes. A couple of examples here. So I don't know if folks have heard of the Trevor Project or the It Gets Better campaign. So these are large-scale social media campaigns that have been promoted a lot on Facebook, on Twitter, and other media platforms to generate discussion around LGBT bullying and LGBT suicide. It's been fairly successful by most accounts, and it certainly has a far reach. So we could leverage some of these platforms to promote a campaign that talks about honesty. It's already happening a little bit informally on some websites. If you pull up Reddit, for example, and go to some of these LGBT subreddits, you'll find posts talking about this phenomenon. You'll find articles on various LGBT media outlets talking about this phenomenon. So this sort of thing is already happening. And thinking about how we can affect change at a more broader macro structural level. So one of the things that I think about is what degree of influence can this work have on the creators and administrators of these apps and websites? What about counter apps? What about developing apps that aim to engage the LGBT community around RSD to kind of promote awareness and promote strategies to kind of combat this phenomenon in these spaces? And as soon as I start thinking about that, Grindr beats me to the punch. So I don't know, actually I don't know how to open this up. But this is a website. There's not much on it, so you're not missing a whole lot. But it's
You won't let me click on it.
it wants you, if you go out of, you can copy it if you go out of the presentation. So Tony might pull that up. But it's, Grindr released this website called Kinder. Very cryptic. There's, it's just a series of images and a series of audio clips. Here it is. There's not a whole lot of context, but it's pretty self-explanatory. Tony, can you click on the bottom left one? We have audio.
When someone says something like, you know, I don't date black people, I'm talking about all black people, that would be referred to as sexual racism.
I don't get a lot of guys wanting with the black pen.
Well, the term is the racism, which is in color, that's kind of the definition of racism.
I'm just fixing everything that's wrong with the world. I'm going to do it all today.
Okay, so I know that's a little hard to hear. So each one of these audio panels represents some phenomenon that's occurring in Grindr. I think the one on the bottom right, you see the man putting on lipstick.
There's an anti-fem thing. What is the word fem? Why you have to be yourself? Yeah.
It's lame as fuck.
The things they're afraid to be themselves. Why do you They don't even have to transition. They could just be flamboyant. It's a thing. Under their nail. See, that's not stupid.
Why is anyone attracted to anyone?
So
There's an anti-fem thing.
that one is talking about sort of the anti-fem phenomenon. So you see a lot of profiles that say, I'm not into feminine guys. Right? So each one of these tackles different things. We have the RSC, we have the anti-fem. You don't have to click on that, Tony, but on the right there, it's fat shaming that is occurring in these spaces. And I think up at the top, can you scroll up, Tony? I can't quite remember what these other two are, but it's some discriminatory practice for certain groups within these spaces. So Grindr is aware this has been happening, and they are now promoting some campaign to address it. Again, there's not a lot of context, but you see the tagline, and it's time to play nice. So they do want to start bringing some awareness and contributing to the discourse on RSD and other phenomena that are occurring in these spaces as a result of discrimination. So they are leveraging their resources in this technology sphere to start to combat this epidemic. I think it's be a good idea for researchers to kind of get involved as well. So that's it.
Thank you.
So, Tony, if you want to go to the last slide, acting actually. So, this is just a question and discussion page. This is just giving a summary of some of the topics that I talked about. If you have any questions or you want to revisit any of these topics and kind of flesh them out a little bit more, this is your program.
Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Wade? What is research, what technology? Lily?
I have a question. When you show the profiles, right, and they're specifying race, and you mentioned also that Facebook now has removed that feature. And one thing that I was thinking, and I'm not really sure how the profiles work, but why is it that they pick specifically based, I mean, there are so many different specific characteristics, right, that people can have preferences on. So is that something that the websites might have encouraged by putting that feature up front? Or are there other options that they can choose, or do they get to put that out as a text, and how does that differ in a different platform?
Right, so this is part of the profile test, so people can just give a free response. They can write whatever they want on their profiles. One of the things that most of these apps do facilitate is filtering by race. So this has been a little bit controversial too. You can set your filters to exclude or only include people of a certain racial ethnic group. So that means these are geolocator apps, right? So you open up your app and it's a grid of people in your vicinity. You can actually set your filters to not show any people who listed a race and ethnicity as black. And so it's just a sea of white faces when you open that up. And that's, people have pointed to that too as being problematic as well. But in terms of the profile text, that's stuff that people are writing in on their own.
Now the selection, then, that would not necessarily have as much of a psychological distress, well-being impact, because then people of color would not necessarily know who is blocking who, right? But it still does have, for example, the HIV issue.
Yes.
Right, so regardless, it hurts people of color.
So since Facebook had closed the profiling of sexual preferences, is there an alternative to recruit participants? Is there an alternative, say, media platform to recruit participants for any kind of research on gay and sexual?
Other than Facebook? Yeah, I mean, you can recruit on any of these platforms. There's studies going on all the time. The reason I use Facebook is that it's relatively inexpensive to have an ad campaign there. Grindr, on the other hand, is terribly expensive. It's really hard to advertise it. So Facebook was a very useful resource for me that I can't use anymore in my work. But there are other options if you have the finances to do it.
Hi, just an extension to that question about collaboration with corporations and the platforms. My work also is on apps, so understanding the difficulty of finding funds. How do you work with the terms and conditions? A lot of these companies also say you can't do research in these particular platforms. And how does that work in terms of like university ethics and technology collaboration?
I mean, I haven't ran into that problem myself. My colleagues are doing this work on Grindr and Scruff and a number of other websites and apps. If I encounter that problem, that would be good for me to have to figure out how to get that. Other questions? Okay.
What was your sample size?
Large. And, my data set had about 2,000 people in the analytics sample here. Okay, yeah. It's not there.
Yeah, I think I just saw the 7 for the scale testing.
I don't have the end. Oh wait, there it is, in the corner. 612. We didn't have complete data. It was a pretty long survey and participants weren't compensated. So we had pretty significant participant drop-off. So I think in the beginning, by the conclusion of the study, there were over 2,000 participants. But by the time that we got to the part of the survey where we measured for all these factors, probably about half the sample had dropped off, so we didn't have complete data. But 612, I mean, it's still pretty sizable. And that's just Black. I'll need to be replicating this work for other racial groups.
What was their incentive to participate?
Interest. I mean, this is this population is very passionate about, this phenomenon. It's ubiquitous in these spaces. Everyone has encountered it at some point, so it's kind of inherently interesting. Yes.
Brian, I'm curious, I mean, one thing that's implied by this is you were able to recruit a large national sample because of the technology that would probably be very difficult otherwise. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, Facebook was really, really good. You could, so I had about 6 ads. I showed you the ad, just showed you a couple of the ad images. And you can track like how your ad is performing. You can track how many people are clicking on the ad. And really interesting because we can see which ads are performing better than others. And we can make modifications on the fly. We definitely had some ads that just weren't performing at all. People just didn't gravitate towards them for whatever reason. Maybe it was the profile text, maybe it was the image, it's hard to know. And then we can pull those if they're not performing well to save money. And then just focus on those ads that are doing well. So really, really wonderful tool, Facebook. I think it has probably one of the better ways to monitor how your recruitment is going compared to other platforms. Of course, now that they've eliminated the possibility to target on sexual orientation, that's disappointing. Yes.
So, other than that, kind of your Grindr site, do you see other sites or apps taking some level of responsibility to address the racism and discrimination aspects, pulling or letting people even report other people that are acting in that way?
To my knowledge, no. Some of these apps have a different kind of culture that has emerged. Grindr is sort of a catch-all. I mean, it's the largest platform. Almost everyone is either on it or has been on it, if you're on an app at all. But then there are other apps that are sort of population specific. Like I put up there, one of those apps up there, that hodgepodge of apps was one called Growler, for example. Growler is an app for people who identify as bears. Folks know that terminology in the community, but this is like larger gay men who are very hairy. So there are sort of these niche apps that target different populations. And one thing that you might find with some of these other niche apps is that sort of the broad discrimination is just kind of less common for lots of categories, not just race. It's just kind of a more inclusive environment. This kind of a different culture that's emerged with some of these apps. But to my knowledge, no one has really explicitly addressed the discrimination. Grindr is just now doing it. This new initiative that we're promoting is brand new. I think that website just got put up maybe less than a month ago. And previously, I know a few years ago, there was an interview done with the creator of Grindr, where people were kind of grilling the creator saying, hey, racism is rampant in these spaces, what are you going to do about it? The creator was noted to say, it's not really my job to police these spaces. I don't endorse it, but people are going to indicate what they want to indicate on their profiles, and there's not much going to do about it. Now they've backtracked, as we can see by this new initiative, so that's good.
So we have to end. Let's give it up for Dr. Ryan.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much for coming. Let's carry the conversation forward next month. On October 4th, Dr. Dolores Albacerin will be here talking about her work in HIV and technology and big data. And she's a superstar, so she will definitely carry this conversation that Ryan has started forward. Thank you for joining us. Spread the word.